Hello everyone and welcome to my little video of Helldivers 2. Now I've played this game enough to reach level 25 and I think that means I've spent a good amount of hours to sort of start talking about this game. Okay, thank you. So, so I wanted to say that I spent a bit of time trying out a bunch of tactics in this game, exploring a lot of stratagems. I didn't unlock everything just because from what I see, the way other people use it, if it doesn't catch my attention, I generally don't purchase those things. And I just wanted to have a little bit to save in case something new comes out. And I was correct about one thing, something new did show up. A Quasar Cannon is a pretty awesome weapon. It just came out like I think 2 days back or something, but I just saw it today and it's pretty amazing. I tested it out a few times. I can even take out a dropship and it's pretty powerful. Like if you nuke the dropship at the right time and it's like starting to come down, you can really blow up the entire troop army and never see them land, which is really one of the most powerful things. I think any team should definitely have one of these with them because it helps you take out heavies. But because of the long charge time, you got to be really careful, especially if you're in the line of sight of something that can shoot rockets at you like a Hulk. They can, in fact, take the hit and continue walking and kill you. So you got to be mindful of that. But yeah, that's one weapon that newly came out. The other weapon that just showed up is the heavy machine gun. From what I hear, it's just not that powerful. I had a teammate use it in my game earlier today. It just didn't seem to give him the impact, and he was complaining about it, saying that the regular machine gun just seems to be better. Though, it could require a bit more testing. Maybe there's a bug and there's a bunch of possibilities. But I'm sure that you would ideally just want to have everything unlocked towards the end of the game. But yeah, those are the two new stuff. As for the rest of the things, the ones I generally use just to share with you guys if you're new to the game. I love the regular machine gun. I think it's absolutely one of the best guns in the game. It's amazing because you get to unlock it very early, so you get very familiar with it. You know exactly what it can do. It's really, really powerful. The AM rifle is nice to take out certain level of sort of these mid armor units. You can't really take on very heavy armor units, so it's not very good later on in the game, but it's very nice to have in the mid game. And if you want to just clear a place out before, like if you have a vantage point like this video is showing, let me tell you, normally in difficulties of hard or higher, you're unlikely going to have any time in the world to do this because you're just going to be constantly swarmed by spawning enemies, and you'll more than often be in the challenge of having enough teammates alive or ammunition to deal with the threat, and that's usually the case at higher levels. So you're just constantly on the move trying to flank enemies, funnel enemies, and control the crowd as you continue to do missions while this horde of enemies is slowly creeping up on you. It's very rarely the case that you can clear the entire horde and have enough time to sit down like this and start sniping stuff. So yeah, that's at least the way I see it. The stalwart is super fun if you're taking on the bugs and not the robots. I think this is a lot more fun to take than the machine gun. One reason is because you can reload it while running around instead of needing to sit down with like the machine gun's reload. So the reloading is just straight up better. It does do a lot lesser damage, but it has a lot more ammo capacity and it shoots quite rapidly and it's low caliber, so you can really have fun with it, just spraying enemies down, especially bugs. But it's really quite weak against armored units. The machine gun though can take on mid like level of armor, but against heavy armored units, the bullets still deflect, so you got to be mindful of that. Heavy armored units are just special. Bullets will deflect off them. They do take damage still, but very minimal. So you most likely will have to find other ways around them, like lightning or fire, or explosive grenades and those sorts of things. The anti-tank is pretty fun. I've seen a lot of people use it. The only downside to this is it's a one-off, but it has a very reasonable cooldown, which is every minute you get to call one of these. So if you end up in a situation where there's like just one tank, you can just nuke it, get rid of it, and then next minute you call another one for the next tank that you see. And again, in difficulties of hard or higher, you are unlikely going to have a chance to only take off one tank. That's usually going to be like 3 or 4 tanks in the vicinity, and that means that a one-off shot like this is just not going to be that good later on in the game. The recoilless rifle, I've not really tested this, and I've not really seen people use this, so I can't really comment on it. Though I think it should do what it says it should do. I don't mind just purchasing this just to give it a test. But yeah, I'm really curious to see whether this is ultimately the better item to take on vehicles. Flamethrower is pretty fun at some points in the game. It's just really cool that you have this, you're like this walking um, you know, yeah, like arsonist sort of build. But the thing about the flamethrower is that you are always susceptible to fire damage yourself, so you can't walk forward. You can only use this from a defensive position, as this person is doing this video. If you walk forward with the flamethrower and the ground is lit on fire, you will catch fire and you will die as well. So you ideally want to shoot flames and walk backwards, which is so it's very good for defensive positioning. It's also good if you want to bunker down somewhere, so you can just touch the ground and let the enemies just set fire. Other than that, if the enemies are tanky enough to just charge towards you, you are more than often going to end up in a situation where the fire damage is going to spread uncontrollably. And this is also kind of a difficulty for allies to try to get past you if you're burning things, because if they get caught along line of sight, a lot of, more than often they are also die of flames instantly because the fire damage won't stop until you hit yourself with a stim to remove it. So it's a very, very powerful weapon, but it's very risky as well. The autocannon seems to be great. I saw my allies use this and I'm very curious. I really want to try to use this, but it works really well when you have an ally to support you. That's kind of the way the autocannon works. So this seems very great in co-op where your teammates are actually very, very helpful. I have seen a situation where one of my allies called down this weapon. The parts were on the ground. We picked it up together and we used this together. So it was really cool. But to like I'm the teammate who will help an ally when I know what they're trying to do. But there's situations where I've been in where allies don't really help you. They don't really understand what you're trying to do. Even if you ping and even if you VC or like voice chat and you try to explain to them, they don't quite understand because they haven't grasped the game fully. And those people are a little bit difficult. Though I think at higher levels, the understanding is sort of there, and most allies understand what these weapons are because they've unlocked most of it. They've read about it. They've at least studied it. And so at that point, they are not like just meta players where it's like, oh, I'm only going to play one weapon the entire time and never really know anything other than meta, right? So, yeah, if you end up in that situation, it's going to be very difficult. But if you find out someone who's just genuinely enjoying the game, not looking stuff up, just, going in, having fun with whatever weapons they have, then you probably find allies who can do stuff like this kind of co-op weapons, which are really powerful. But yeah, autocannon's pretty insane. It's really, really is a powerful weapon. This is the heavy machine gun that I mentioned. Railgun is pretty nice. It has this very powerful charge. It can kill enemies and it can kill all the mid-level enemies. It can do pretty high damage to high, what do you call these, to tanks as well, from what I've seen. But there's a risk that if you overcharge the railgun, you kill yourself. So I think it's one of those things that you need to be mindful of. And I rarely see people use this, probably because of the load up time and the risk not being rewarded well enough. I think it can be tweaked a little bit, then maybe it just becomes better. Spear is another co-op weapon. I also haven't seen people really use this. This seems like the most powerful anti-tank weapon because as you can see, it one-shots the tank. It is pretty insane. It clearly says it's effective against large and armored enemies. But you must lock on to the target, so it requires you and an ally to be standing still. Also, if you see off the backpack of the ally, it has 3 shots, so you can take down 3 tanks using this tool, but you and your ally has to be standing still. So it's a very high risk, high reward kind of play. If you can pull this off really well, maybe shoot a drop ship down, that sounds amazing, but if you can't get it right, 2 of you may be down by something in the same area. As you go to higher levels, because there's constantly fire from all directions, you would generally want to spread out reasonably from your allies, but not too much. Just within range so you can actually be in line of sight and help your allies, but you need to have some distance so you don't all get nuked at the same time by a Hulk or something. Looking at the orbitals so far, I think the first one's been fine. I saw some people use it. It's okay. It's just very random, and so the damage is not very focused, so I don't really like it. Airburst, I saw one person use it like very early on in the game. I don't remember whether anyone else used it because after that the maps got really foggy and I couldn't tell whether it's the fog or the actual airburst. But yeah, it's one of the downsides, right? Oh, another thing I forgot to mention is flamethrower is good against bugs, but not so good against machines. For some reason, the machines just keep walking through the flames. But bugs die a lot easier because I think a lot softer. Generally, the bugs are easier to deal with than the machines. So far from the general gameplay, I feel the machines are just more difficult because they're more organized. They have these very powerful spawn locations, very well bunkered up. And if you can't get into the right angle to throw a grenade into them, you might be in a bit of trouble. You always need to wait for an orbital, and that kind of takes time. So anyway, the 120 He barrage and the 380 He barrage work the same way. It's just that one shoots further than the other and takes a little bit longer to load than the other. This video looks really nice because of the distance you're at, but you can't really do this. You gotta be a lot closer to throw the. Maybe you can if you throw it at a high enough angle, it'll land somewhere there. That'd be pretty awesome. But again, you don't end up in a situation where you have this high ground vantage point like this video is showing. It's very, it's nigh impossible. It's like maybe 1 in 100 scenario that you have that kind of vantage point. More than often, the field requires you to stand somewhere in the lower ground or sort of mid-high ground where enemies will pick up your scent and they will come chasing after you. The orbital walking barrage, though, I saw an ally use. This one seems pretty cool. This is really good if you want to charge into enemy lines. So you turn this on and you get into an enemy bunker or something like that. It seems cool. Now the downside is it doesn't really target anything specific. It's still very random. And as you can see from the video itself, the middle line of enemies are completely fine. You can see that, like that there's a front few enemies they're still alive, which means it completely missed even the enemy that the laser is standing like pointing at. So it's just so difficult to control just from the video itself that I know that I wouldn't want to use it. The orbital laser I think is the best orbital in the game. If you throw this down at like a robot base, you can basically clear out the entire base, including its spawning machines, and it just goes through, like sweeps through everything and blows everything up. It's pretty powerful. It can also help you take down tanks, but it just scorches the ground, so you got to watch out for the path of fire. But it's really good when it's well controlled, when because everyone can see the orbital sort of coming down. It lights up the area really well. It comes from the sky, so allies can coordinate pretty well by seeing the beam hit the ground. It's not very difficult to plan out compared to a random orbital like the airburst. Like you don't know where the thing is going to come down once the beam's gone, right? You roughly see the red beam, you just know, okay, don't stand near the red beam. But like a 380, you could be standing somewhere here, beam goes here, you don't know which direction the ally actually threw it from, so that could be a risk, especially if you're in thick fog. And the walking barrage also works the same way. Until you know which direction it's actually going to go, like you don't see it going forward. Only when you see it going forward, you sort of know, okay, so this is the direction it's actually heading forward. So it's very difficult to predict. The laser, very easy to see, very easy to control, very good for teamwork. Rail cannon strike. So I've used this. This is pretty fun. It's very good against tanks, but it's a one-off shot. So while this is super effective against hulks and even the what do you call this? The bile spitter or whatever, right? Like the big not the bile spitter. There's one more thing. Give me a second. Let me get the name. Right, the Bile Titan. So yeah, this works really well against the Bile Titan. It does so much damage. You can basically one-shot a lower level Bile Titan at a very high level like Helldive. It's not going to one-shot it, but it's going to bring it down really low because after that, I think a few machine gun, like a 3 or 4 seconds of machine gun also helps me bring it down on top of that. But more than often it takes down the enemy. I never really seen a scenario where it doesn't. Only problem is again in high level difficulty you will be having multiple tanks like these and you rather have an orbital working on them while staying alive and on because while they focus on the main boss as it gets locked onto the tank it will still be burning everything around in the area giving you more AoE damage which is pretty amazing. Hangar wise, strafing run really fun, great for a small area, small group of enemies. Eagle airstrike, also pretty cool. Just nuke everything in the area. Cluster bomb, kind of similar to the airstrike. I don't really see a huge difference between the two. So I would just recommend you to take the airstrike because it's a bit faster. But if you want to go cluster, sure, that's totally up to you. They're both not able to destroy buildings, so take note of that. The napalm strike creates a wall of fire. This is very powerful. I use this quite a bit, especially against bugs or even against robots if I really want to use some way to defend my team. This is a great way to light up the area and weaken up, like just soften all of the enemies. Bugs will die, but robots don't. They can still survive. And bugs that are tanks also will survive. So you can use this to soften them up. That's basically it. Jump pack is situational. I generally don't take it. A lot of high level players don't take the jump pack. It's very specific kind of gameplay. You can use this at certain tower defense scenarios where you want to get a high vantage point and go into just a snipe only mode kind of thing. Then it might be practical, but otherwise no. Eagle Smoke Strike, it's a cool thing. I think it works well against robots. As far as I'm concerned, you can still get shot and you can die. Like this video is specifically showing a scenario where you get hit like maybe once out of 10 shots, but that's you being lucky. Enemies will not just stop sometimes, they will run forward and continue walking. And you can end up in a bad situation. You can't like smoke strike an enemy base and just run in to destroy it. It doesn't work that way. You have to use this in an open field like this scenario, or a defense scenario where you throw it and then you try to defend a location, hoping the enemy doesn't walk forward. Very lucky, yeah, everything works fine. The 110 rocket pods is really powerful. I tested this and it does aim the largest target near the beacon, and it basically will hit everything around that. So it's pretty darn powerful. It can take out a lot of mid-tier enemies, but it's not strong enough to take on a tank by itself. But that's just what it is. The 500 kg though, absolutely amazing. This is the one weapon that you want to take, especially when you're taking out bases, because as you can see, it's really good for clearing a lot of bases. Did one actually, that example is very bad. He actually didn't destroy any of the spawn points for the bugs. If you see the open holes, you can see they're still available and they're not closed. So he dropped it pretty poorly, but as you can see, it can take down a what do you call this? A bile titan, which means it's still pretty darn powerful. It can help you take down buildings. It's just a really good weapon to take as opposed to the orbital if you want to just have a bomb straight up. If you ask me, I would prefer the orbital laser, but it is a bit more random because it can pick up a target that's not in the vicinity you're looking for, and it might get just distracted and go off in a different direction. 500 kg bomb is always going to hit its target. It's just going to nuke the entire area. So there's that. It just works differently, but ultimately they're two of the better weapons. So yeah, I'll leave it to you. The bridge-wise precision strike is okay. Nothing really special there. Gas strike, I didn't really bother looking into this. I saw no one use it. EMS strike, pretty cool, but I have a better solution for this, which is the EMS mortar, which is one of the best items in the game. I'll come to that in a bit. Smoke strike, fun. It's just fun. I don't know what's the point of this. HMG emplacement. Okay, so I never unlocked this, but there was a location where I saw a HMG emplacement just sitting there, and I hopped onto it, and it is really fun. It is really powerful. It can stagger tanks if used right. It can stagger like the mid armor tier enemies. The full armor tier, they still charge towards you if they are charging, but I did so much damage. I took down a tank like the what do you call this? The robot tank, right? So it's pretty amazing how powerful this weapon is. But as it says, it has is slow to turn. So and it's a fixed position, so you got to drop it there. And you can use this to defend or to hold off enemies, but you can't use this on the run or on the fly. So it's just one of those things you got to be aware of. And if you have good situational awareness, you can probably pull this off really well. Shield generator relay. This thing's really powerful. Like this thing can actually be the ultimate defense because you can leave the shield and run in a general direction, and the enemy still cannot shoot past the shield. So the enemies literally have to run through the shield to the other side to actually shoot you. So this is an effective wall that can protect your entire team when you're doing objective and you're running away. And I like because it has that versatility. So it's a pretty powerful tool despite being stationary. Tesla Tower. This is fun, though there's a huge weakness to the Tesla Tower, which I kind of regret unlocking, but I know it's fun still. Weakness is it's a very short range tool. It says in close range, but it's really close range. It really does not hit enemies beyond a certain distance. So this was very good in a specific scenario where I could drop it in a choke point where all the enemies just kept getting struck by this thing. But against robots, I don't think it'll work very well because a lot of the robots they just shoot from range and they'll take out your Tesla. And yeah, they're just gonna shoot you from range and kill you. So if you want to use to get bugs very specific, yes, you can, as this video shows you. But clearly they're not showing you it's used against robots because they kind of know I think it's weakness, so you can take it for what it is. Anyway, anti-personnel minefield. Now, if you want to use this, you need very good coordination with your allies. My recommendation, just don't use it. It's very, very difficult to control because if you end up in a situation where you get back into a corner and you got to run through that minefield, you're doomed. There's literally nothing you can do to get through that minefield at the pace you're running. You're just going to die. Supply pack is really good. I saw some allies actually using it, and I even had one just drop one down for me to pick up and support the team. It's very nice. You're able to just constantly refill supplies for teammates. It's basically like a instead of getting a supply depot down, you just have this in your back, and you have four of it, so you can just keep pumping supply into your allies, and it's really, really powerful on the field. It works really well in co-op, but it even works well in general, solo gameplay as well. I think it will do pretty well. I'm just gonna unlock it for fun. Sure. Grenade launcher. Now this is great because it allows you to close bug holes like these, which is what it shows. I have not tested this on the Robot Factory. I'm actually kind of curious whether it does this. Usually Robot Factory I just use the grenade, but if it works in the Robot Factory then probably I don't mind trying it, but if the Robot Factory is open in the front door, I know I could just shoot through, but sometimes the Robot Factory's front door is closed, so you got to shoot through the sort of vent. That's where I really need to check whether it works. If it works for both cases, then the grenade launcher is actually pretty strong. But it's not meant for armor or buildings, so it's an okay weapon. I generally wouldn't take this to a fight. Um, Laser cannon. I saw a bunch of allies actually using this. It looks pretty cool, but it's a bit difficult to control because of its constant firing. Like if your ally is the only one who's shooting in this direction, and you're not actually trying to get past your ally or anything like that, then they can just do this. Also, because it has a overheat mechanism, you don't have many charges. I think it's like four ammo packs or something like that. Though it looks pretty cool against the metal robots. So I probably will try it when I get a chance. So you know what? Let me just unlock this. Incendiary mines. They work the same way of the APM, but they're just more deadly. God Dog Rover. No. I absolutely love this one. It's the and usually I go for the laser one. Now here's the thing. This is a very double-edged sword. If you end up in a situation where this thing is targeting an enemy that is just running across you, and it catches you in line of sight, it will kill you. I've died to my rover so many times. I've killed my allies with my rover. I've died to ally rovers, and it'll come to a point later in the game where you realize a rover is probably good for like when you're going solo missions, but when you're in co-op and you're running around like along your allies, you don't want to slice people with this thing. So most people don't use it. It's just not that strong. It is powerful in specific situations where you want to keep hunters and stuff like that away, but otherwise, nah, it's not really that recommended. Ballistic shield. I actually wanted to get this. I don't have funds right now, but I will be getting it in the future just to test it out because I found out that there is a one-handed weapon that I can combo with this. And let me show you. I think it's here. Mm, the stalwart? No, not this one. No, it's a primary weapon. It's a one-handed primary weapon. I think it's an LMG of sorts, and I think it can actually be comboed with this. You don't have to use a secondary weapon. You can actually use a one-handed weapon and march through enemies. And being an LMG means you do decent damage, while it allows you to block, as you can see, robots from firing, which I think is huge against robot missions. So I probably will be going through this path if it really helps. Arc thrower is amazing. Though the lightning bounce can bounce through allies, so if your allies are in the line of fire, try not to shoot this at enemies because it will arc through the enemy to kill your allies. And I've done that a lot, trust me. Good thing about this weapon is that you rarely will miss because it actually will just arc to the closest enemy within its line of sight. So it's pretty powerful in terms of always being able to hit your enemy. But it takes time to charge. You need a good amount of distance between yourself and the enemy, and only then it works really, really well. And it's good against both bugs and robots. The electric doesn't really mean anything specific there. Quasar Cannon's new weapon, as I mentioned, is pretty powerful, so I highly recommend you guys to try this out, especially if you can nuke dropships with this. It's pretty awesome. I managed to kill two dropships myself. I had an ally who also killed two in a single mission, and it was really, really fun. Shield generator pack, super powerful against robot missions, really helps you catch your breath and get your stratagems going when you're especially being hit by all of these little rockets and stuff. Regularly you would die, but you can tank it because of the generator pack and continue doing your mission. So it's pretty powerful. Against the bugs, it specifically works well against the Bile Spitter. Not so well against the Bile Titan because it does a lot of damage, but it can still tank a bit. If you're in the edge of the spit, you can sort of tank a little bit, graze off, and heal yourself and survive. But against the regular Bile Spitter, you can take quite a bit of hits and you can keep going. So It's pretty amazing. Machine gun sentry, very very powerful weapon early in the game. Just remember, don't be in the line of fire or you're dead. Gatling sentry. I didn't manage to unlock it. I really want to. I don't know how much more powerful this thing is than this thing, so I probably have to test it out before I can speak. I haven't really seen people use this though. Most people I see use the machine gun sentry. Mortar sentry, very very commonly used. A lot of people use this. I generally don't take this because I found a better mortar called the EMS mortar sentry. But this is really really good as an offensive weapon because as you can see, it shoots mortar shells and it can take down an enemy beyond cover. So it can actually detect where enemies are and then shoot the shell. So you can place one down. And even if you can't see enemies in the fog, this thing will shoot in the general direction of where enemies are, and you can locate where enemies are that way. And because they're under siege already, you can just rush in. It's really powerful. This guard dog is the machine gun variant of the laser one. I think this is a little bit safer around allies, though if it's shooting and you're in the line of fire, you're gonna get shot anyway. Autocannon sentry. I haven't tested this. I'm really curious whether it is powerful. It does say it's anti-tank specifically, and it's over long range. So I think this might be a really good weapon if you're taking on very heavy armored enemies later in the game. Rocket Sentry. This is what I've been using right now to take on tanks. I find this really good, which is why I didn't get the autocannon sentry after I got this. It's been pretty powerful against a lot of these armored vehicles. As you can see, two shots. Those pesky robots on those walker-like machines, which is really really fun when I see it happening that way. However, a lot of these sentries have been sacrificed in the name of the EMS Mortar Sentry, one of the most powerful stratagems in the game. This thing can stun an entire horde of enemies and hold them in place for your team to just go ham on them. The enemies will just be dazed and woozy and not like immobile, and it works on bugs, it works on robots. It can completely slow down you and your allies, though it doesn't prevent you from firing. So while the enemies can't move, they're stunned throughout. You guys, your movements can get locked down. You can still jump. You can like leap forward and sort of try to escape it, or stand barely in the edge of it to be fine. But you can still shoot at the enemies. Enemies can't really react, so it is really really powerful. And again, it detects enemies regardless of the location behind line of fire and line of sight. So it's really powerful in giving you an initial sort of opening where you can place it behind a wall. You see it firing two shells, and then you rush in to see all your enemies just stunned up, and you just clean all of them. It's really, really powerful. And because this thing cannot indirectly kill your allies, you can sort of rush in even if you're getting stunned or slowed. However, if you get directly hit by its shell, you can in fact die. It's not it's not like you can't die from it. It's just that you see the shell landing there. So if that shell that lands actually hits you or your ally directly, you die. Like this one, that red little shell there. But the explosion, the EMP explosion around it, cannot kill you. So it's pretty powerful. Very good against, very good in a group. So your allies don't really suffer so much. They have free reign to decide what to do. They can call out the stratagems. They can kill the enemies. They can heal themselves and do all that fun stuff while even being hit by this thing. Pretty awesome. The exosuit. I mean, what's more to be said? This is unlocked only level 25, so I just managed to try this in 2 games. It's super fun. Although I did have the opportunity to try this earlier because some really nice people managed to get me a chance to try this exosuit. So some level 30 somethings drop into my game, just drop an exosuit and be like, hey, you guys can try it if you want to. And those are really, really fun moments because it's like getting this huge toy to try out, even though you haven't really unlocked it yet. It is really powerful. It has very limited rockets, so you want to save the rockets as much as possible and use the machine guns mainly as your weapon. It is armored, but it can get damage. So if you take too much damage, it can explode and you will die inside it. So you might be mindful of your health. Its machine gun is really powerful though, and it can take down heavy units really, really well. It is excellent against hulks and the likes. It's excellent against all heavy units. This is ultimately just the best weapon in the game if used correctly. Its weakness is that it's a little bit clunky and slow, so you may have to walk into an enemy base if you want to kill a specific enemy. And you can get caught behind rocks and trees and not really be able to move. And it's kind of the weakness of this Patriot exosuit. You can't really like throw in a stratagem to bring down an enemy like an orbital, right? You gotta walk in with this thing. So if you don't have line of sight on your enemy and you want to call this thing down, you might want to be mindful of how far you are from the actual target. Um, So it takes a bit of skill to actually place this in the right position. You can't just get into it and walk across the map. It's just not effective enough because it's gonna take quite a bit of time. And its cooldown, as you can see, is 5 minutes. So if you've called one down, you gotta wait another 5 minutes before you can do it again. And it's only got 2 limited uses. So once you called it down twice, that's it. Zero. You're not gonna get this again in the game. These stuff are like unlimited. For example, EMS Sentry is unlimited. All of these things are unlimited. Let's see what else is actually limited. Um, that actually might be a good indicator of power as well if they're limited stuff. But I don't think anything else that I know is specifically. Okay, so the 500 kg has one use, but I don't remember this being limited. Huh. Uh, 600 seconds to. Okay, okay. I think it's two uses within 600 seconds. No, actually, I gotta check this. I'm actually kind of confused because I remember that it was very difficult to call that down as opposed to something like a 500 kg. No cooldown, one use. Hmm. Something's off in terms of the way it's describing it, but just remember this thing takes 5 minutes of cooldown, so you can't keep calling this down. So just reserve it if you can. Use it when you really need to. Usually for two big fights, and then it works really well that way. Ship modules, I'm just upgrading whatever I have resources for, so not really too particular. I would say the bridge is the most important, but I need to get the purple stuff, so I need to go into higher level missions to do that. Now that I'm level 25, I basically have quite a bit of difficulties unlocked. Let me show that to you guys. Da 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 da. There we go. So I've got suicide mission as my highest difficulty right now. So I have played suicide mission. It is in fact a suicide mission. I have played extreme regularly. I play hard because it's just easier to finish up the game. You get medals a little bit faster. Extreme is a little bit of a struggle because you get these a lot of these what do you call this enemies, especially. They're testing the system now while I'm doing a video. Thank you, AI. Shut up now. Right, so yeah, generally I play hard because it's just a bit faster, but extreme, if you have a good team, you can do extreme pretty well. Suicide mission, you really need high level allies, and you really need allies with very good equipment. Generally, if I'm being carried by a team of level 35s or 40s, then I don't mind doing this, but if it's just a bunch of level 25s, I'd much rather just diving in hard. But if it's a good team, I don't mind doing extreme. And that's generally how I feel the difficulty is. I have had a chance to actually try Helldive. It's pretty insane. Enemies are just pouring in constantly, but it's totally doable. Um, it's pretty fun if you have a fun group who really doesn't mind just dying and using their death to come back in and kill the enemy again, and constantly just being berated by enemy fire and shooting back, and it's pretty insane. Like you can just go hear people screaming in the mic, and it's really fun. Um, and I love the memes that have come out of this game: democracy and capitalism and military power and all these kinds of things. It's really cool. Like this is like the sort of a right-wing American fantasy where you have this never-ending war and you get to be all these macho military style what do you call this campaigns, and you can prove how capitalism is the king. And yeah, I mean there's a lot of things, right, that you can learn from the concepts in this game, but most importantly it is really cool. The game is just what a futuristic war might be if it is driven by capitalism, and yeah, it's pretty awesome. As for the unlocks, in case you guys are wondering what kind of acquisitions I went for, I just did this as much as I wanted to until I managed to get enough credits to unlock a one of the war bounds, which is like a sort of like a mini battle pass. You can in fact purchase credits at the super credit store, so though you can totally earn this in the game. So I didn't bother purchasing anything beyond the game itself. And I got the steel veterans. I wanted to get cutting edge, though I felt like I wanted to just try this because it has some incendiary stuff, so I thought it'd be fun. As for the weapons itself, Liberal Concussive sucks because it does very little damage, though it ignites enemies. The Breaker Incendiary does a little bit more damage, and it does, in fact, what do you call this? Do some light armor penetration, but it's also pretty weak of a gun. The Dominator, however, is absolutely powerful. It's an explosive gun, So it's a very unique category. Let me show you what I mean. You can see it here. See this? It's its own category called explosive, right? And it's pretty powerful. It's medium armor penetration. It does 200 damage, it's 15 capacity, a little reasonably low capacity when you think about it, but for considering its fire rate and medium armor penetration and explosive, it can kill a lot of medium armor enemies really fast. It's really, really powerful in terms of its damage. Breaker Incendiary is very nice if you just want to set up a group of enemies on fire. It just spread shotguns very easy, but you can't really kill a lot of people. I've been trying to use this to bring enemies down. Sometimes you got to unload more than half the clip just to kill a bunch of enemies. Um, and it's just not fun when that happens. Maybe it's good for crowd control, but I wouldn't say so. Breaker is one of the better guns in the game, hands down. Whether it's crowd control, whether it's single target, just so much damage. 330, 10 clips, you can do like 3000 damage. You can just unload it really, really fast too. It is slightly higher recoil rate, so you got to be in a little bit closer range if you want to get this accurate. I could be crouching, but for me, I just prefer the breaker over the incendiary. For some reason, I just feel the breaker just does more damage because it is double damage here, as you can see, right? Despite the clip size, it's still a pretty powerful weapon. Punisher, really high damage, but you gotta be really close to the enemy, so I don't really like it. The recoil also really sucks. Fire rate is pretty low. Submachine gun. So this is the one-handed gun, which you can actually combo with your shield. And I think it'll work really well in situations where you just want a gun to just do damage to the enemy to distract them as you march forward with your shield, allowing your allies to sort of flank. And I think it works really well that way. Marksman rifle, not really my thing. It's an okay gun, but I'm not really a rifle kind of guy. So, I mean, marksman rifle, not really my thing. I prefer assault rifles, so yeah. Anyway, this one is an okay gun. It's very weak in terms of damage. Its main focus is just, as it says, to stagger enemies. I don't really like it. You'd much rather just try the break incendiary if you're gonna do that. I don't really like this gun. Liberator is the default gun. It's a nice gun. It's okay. It gets out leveled pretty fast. A Liberator Penetrator is like an upgraded version of the Liberator, just that it does medium armor penetrating. Now compared to this, Dominator is straight up better. Dominator does way more damage, and it also has the same armor penetration, and it has explosive. So it's really, really a powerful weapon. And if you were to think about it that way, I've already pretty much unlocked all the weapons in the Steel Veterans tree in that sense, because there's only 3. So yeah, I pretty much got all the guns. So I think that this is the last one is definitely the strongest in that tree. If you're looking at cutting edge, I see a lot of people using sickle because I think it's a very nice high fire rate gun. As you can see, 750 fire rate, pretty insane. So I think it's a really fun gun to use. I see a lot of people using the sickle. Punisher Plasma seems like one of those guns with it's also an explosive shotgun. Its recoil is ridiculously high, which means I don't know how people will be firing this thing, but I will be unlocking it to actually test it out myself. And the Blitzer just seems like the best gun again, the last in the tree. It's a shotgun with infinite capacity. That's absolutely insane, which means this thing doesn't heat up. It doesn't have any other problems. You don't ever have to reload it, right? It's just, you just have recoil and you just have a low fire rate and you just keep shooting and you just keep shooting and you just keep shooting. And I think I'll really like the Blitzer once I get to it. I'm also kind of curious about the dagger. I saw one person use it. Looks pretty fun. Not really sure how strong it is, but I've tried out. Though it seems pretty clear the last gun in the tree is the strongest. Now, as for the main tree itself, the last gun is something I have not unlocked, so I probably have to milk my way down. There is a marksman rifle here. There is a slugger shotgun. I don't really like stuff that just slugs enemies. 280 is still decent damage though. But this one, I like the name, Spray and Pray. It's a shotgun that has pretty high fire rate. 330 is pretty high for a shotgun. So I'm assuming, as it says the name, Spray and Pray is what you gotta do. Then I need something with medium armor penetration, which is what I'm looking for. This is also an explosive weapon. It's energy based too. But none of these have medium armor penetration. So in a way, compared to this one, the Liberator, which is the only thing that has medium armor penetration, I am very much in favor of the GR5 Dominator. Yeah, it's kind of where I'm standing right now. So the only thing that might potentially change my mind in terms of weapons is this thing, the Blitzer. It doesn't say that it penetrates anything, but knowing its damage and infinite capacity, I'm sure it's a very, very fun gun to use. So I can't wait to try it out. Waiting for the next amount of credits so that I can get the next pass, another Warbound, And in the future, I'm sure they're going to have, more unique war bonds. I hope they continue to allow us to just farm credits as we wish and not really limit us too much to buying credits. I can see how this game can get pretty dirty pretty fast if they really want to go down the microtransactions route. Though so far, I've never heard anyone complaining about microtransactions in this game, which is a good sign. That means everyone's been just having fun with the base set. So I hope there's no power creep in terms of weapons and utilization, because if you look at things like the helmets, it clearly says that there's armor passive, no additional bonuses. It's possible in the future that there are helmets with additional bonuses. I can imagine that there would be stuff like night vision or heat vision and stuff like that. It's a totally implementable thing. So I hope none of those are locked behind paywall, and I hope the devs continue to support the community as the community is supporting the devs, because people absolutely love this game. It has become a sort of a cult classic already, and within its first week even, it's like a meme, and it's amazing. It's gorgeous. People are having fun. People are playing together. You have emotes like hugs, and people just come and hug you because it's just so fun to be part of the community. And we have a ridiculous number of players playing, and they are active in this game constantly. As you can see now, it's a little bit late, so we have about 120,000, but I think on a regular time we have about half a million, which is pretty insane. Half a million people playing a game is absolutely ridiculous. Wait, let me just check what is the highest peak. Yeah, so the all-time peak for the Helldivers was about 458,000, which is close to half a million. And the regular 24-hour peak right now is somewhere around 267,000. So it's about a quarter million players. It is still absolutely insane. Anything above 100,000 people is pretty crazy. Like 100,000 people in a video game. Like just imagine putting 100,000 people in a stadium, like even, right? It's pretty amazing. So yeah, I've been having so much fun. I reached level 25, finally unlocked almost all of the top tier, what do you call this, stratagems, and I can't wait to continue to progress to get everything else unlocked and see what else is awaiting the future of this game. But thanks so much for watching and staying tuned. I just want to give a quick introduction to new players who are curious on what to optimize in and how I've been having fun as a level 25. I'm sure there's a lot more for me to learn, as will every other player in their own little journey playing in co-op or as single players. But I highly recommend you play as co-op because it's super fun to just be able to go and get into a dive by hitting R, which is the button for quick play. And there were some issues they had, I think, with quick play and matchmaking, but I think most of them are solved because I can just hop into a match really quickly through quick play. And there was also a bug which had to do with arc weapons, I think. I was using the lightning weapon and it crashed the game a few times. And I think I saw someone mentioning it on Reddit. Thank you, Reddit. And I realized that, okay, I can probably survive without the weapon for a while. And the crash was solved. I didn't have to worry about it shortly after. I was using lightning weapons, I think 2 days or 3 days after. And no more crashes from using lightning weapons. So really good to know that the patches are coming in. And I'm sure the devs are having a very busy time trying to get everything solved. Because all of these things, as you can see down here, these panels and people sitting on them and working, are also newly added. Like some of these things were empty when I first got into the game, but they're filling it up with crew and stuff. So I'm sure there's going to be a lore building and more things to look up and read. Cool little stuff to do. Like I can imagine there's going to be crafting tools and enhancing existing gear. I'm guessing that's the next big piece of the puzzle because we're going to end up in a situation where we have too many, what do you call these, of these resources. So I'm sure once we have purchased the stratagems and the modules, we probably are going to use those things to upgrade our weapons and whatnot. Yeah, whichever goes. But I truly hope that any kind of upgrade or any kind of level up or any kind of progress is done purely out of in-game effort and in-game credits, just to keep the game focused on free-to-play aspect. Because honestly, we already bought the game, right? There's no free-to-play at this point, so we shouldn't be needing to top up. But yeah, so that's it from me. Thanks so much for watching. See you guys in the next one. Hopefully, if I decide to make another video, I don't know, we'll see. But if you guys are hell diving, hell yeah, have fun, guys.